We're grateful for the opportunity we have to meet here and to serve our fellow citizens. May we bring both the strength of our convictions and the willingness to listen and learn to our discussions. May we consider the needs and aspirations of all our fellow citizens in our decisions. May we always represent our constituents with dignity, integrity, and honesty. Merci.
Thank you, Emily O'Reilly. So we're here to review the Bill 16, an act to amend the Income Tax Act. This is a public hearing and a clause-by-clause review. So welcome to this meeting of the Standing Committee on Government Operations. Participants are abiding by social distancing guidelines or are participating remotely. Members of the public were invited to contact the committee clerk if they wish to provide comment or input into Bill 16 during this review. I will now ask the members to introduce themselves for the record. Starting on my left.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Caitlin Cleveland, MLA for Cam Lake.
Kevin O'Reilly, Frame Lake.
Ron Bonnetus, Decho.
Staff.
Committee Clerk.
Stephen Dunbar, Committee Advisor.
Law Clerk.
And I'm the chair of the Government Operations MLA for the Batcha, Freedom Marcellos. This afternoon, the Standing Committee on Government Operations is reviewing Bill 16, an act to amend the Income Tax Act, which reduces the small business tax rate from 4% to 2% and is deemed to have come into force January 1st, 2021. Bill 16 also makes retroactive amendments to harmonize the Northwest Territories tax regime with the federal system. The bill itself is available on the Legislative Assembly's website. The amendments would address two things: ensure that split income received by a senior is factored into the determination of the territorial age credit, and allow more pension credits for veterans. I will now invite the Honourable Caroline Wozniak, Minister of Finance, to open the proceedings on Bill 16. Following the Minister's remarks, committee members may make comments or pose questions on the bill. Minister Wozniak, you can introduce the people around the table with you and proceed with your opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, we are also abiding by our social distancing guidelines. I do have, however, in this boardroom with me, Deputy Minister Sandy Calgatar, Director of Fiscal Policy Kelly Block from Department of Finance. On the line, I believe we have Sherry Durock, who's Legislative Counsel from the Department of Justice, and also here with me is Ministerial Special Advisor Kelly McLaughlin. And Madam Chair, with respect to opening remarks, again, thank you for giving this opportunity for me to appear here before committee, or remotely rather, but in front of committee, on the review of Bill 16, an act to amend the Income Tax Act. The main purpose of Bill 16 is to reduce the tax burden on small businesses by reducing the small business tax rate from 4% to 2%. With this reduction, Northwest Territories small businesses will incur a tax rate of 2% on taxable income under $500,000. Any taxable income over $500,000 will continue to be the subject to the general corporate tax rate of 11.5%. This proposed measure will become effective on January 1st, 2021. We have also provided the Standing Committee with a motion for consideration, which would correct some language that in the coming into force provision of the bill, subsection 5, sub 3, in order to reflect a retroactive effective date of the tax rate change. We are also taking this opportunity to propose 2 housekeeping measures to keep our legislation current and maintain value harmonization with the federal income tax legislation. The first housekeeping measure proposes changes in the calculation of the territorial age credit to include taxable split income to ensure seniors are not able to claim a higher age credit than what they would otherwise be entitled. The second housekeeping measure proposes changes in the calculation of the territorial pension credit. This measure will allow Canadian veterans with certain income benefits received under the Federal Veterans Wellbeing Act to claim the territorial pension credit. That is the conclusion of my opening remarks, Madam Chair, and I am now happy to answer any questions that members may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members? MLA Johnson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In general, I am supportive of reducing the small business tax rate. I think whatever we can do to help our small businesses this time. I was wondering if the minister has a sense of how many businesses of ours are small businesses, or I guess framed another way, how many corporations we have that pay over $500,000. I'm just wanting to get a sense of how many businesses this will help. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Minister Wozniak?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Madam Chair, we think we had about just over 600 businesses would be able to claim this deduction right now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Supplementary?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and glad to hear that. Do we have a total number of businesses in the Northwest Territories? I guess the second half of my question is how many businesses are not small businesses? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Minister Wozniak?
Sorry, Madam Chair. Just wanted to make sure I had the correct total number. Total number of corporations in the Northwest Territories, 2,523.
Thank you. MLA O'Reilly?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I have some questions about the change in the small business tax. Nobody likes to pay taxes, but taxes are the price of civilization. So can someone explain to me why we're doing this? Thanks, Madam Chair.
Minister Wozniak?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, up to this point, the Northwest Territories remained really one of the higher, if not at the highest end of small business tax rates as compared to the rest of Canada. So it was really our intention to make ourselves more competitive vis-a-vis, small businesses. So, and in fact, I believe other than perhaps Quebec, we in fact were the highest small business tax rate. So this is an opportunity to make ourselves, as I said, more competitive, to bring us in line with what was happening already and has been for some time in the rest of Canada, and a recognition that small businesses often are really an entity that can help circulate their dollars in the Northwest Territories. They are the residents, they are the folks that are neighbors and living and working here in the territory. So makes us more competitive, but also keeps those dollars hopefully in the north, circulating in the north. Thank you, Madam Chair.
One supplementary, Mr. O'Reilly?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I appreciate that. And can someone tell me then what the loss of revenues are going to be and whether we're going to make any efforts to make that up somehow? Thanks, Madam Chair.
Minister Wozniak?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, our estimates right now are that it would be approximately 1.4 million in lost revenues as a result of this. Obviously, the revenues being generated during the current pandemic may change that in the immediate term or short term, as I'm expecting many businesses wouldn't have generated as much revenue in the last year. As for making that up, again, we get into whether or not we would be wanting to look at increasing your tax base or your tax rates in order to increase your revenue overall as a government. And it's certainly our hope that by helping small businesses be more competitive, that they can actually, that may actually help encourage entrepreneurship and may well grow this area, whether there can be a few more tax payers in the course of time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? MLA O'Reilly?
So, Madam Chair, not so much a question as a comment. Look, I don't have anything against small businesses. In fact, I've tried to encourage them through much of my time here over the last 5 years. But if the reason we're doing this is in terms of competitiveness and tax fairness, I really urge that the minister look at other parts of the income tax regime in terms of fairness. And I've advocated in the past for an additional high income tax bracket for personal income tax, and as most other jurisdictions in Canada have done. So in the interest of fairness, I'm urging the minister to look at other ways to make up the revenue and to help implement this concept of tax fairness through other parts of the regime. That's all I have to say. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. O'Reilly. Do you want to comment on that, Minister Wasnick?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, look, I do appreciate that, having the conversation, and I think it's a conversation that needs to be had publicly. So this is the proper forum to do it, that if in fact we are going to look at increasing a top rate for high income earners, then that is a conversation that should be had publicly. That wouldn't necessarily, depending on where we would land in terms of what income bracket we would be, what the income threshold would be, and then what rate that would be, determines how much revenue there actually would be received from that. And unless we, really catch a fairly wide net and at a fairly high rate, we certainly wouldn't be making up a significant amount, whether or not we didn't hit the $1 million or just over $1 million. So not a significant amount of revenue for something that would have obviously a significant impact on people's income. And just my concern being then is, who are we targeting, and are we targeting doctors and those who may be in a senior level of management in companies and in corporations whose head offices we want to keep here. I don't have that information, but those would be some concerns that I would have on the other side. That said, as I said at the beginning, I do think that's a conversation to be had. And, again, in the course of budget dialogues, happy to hear from folks again on that. This last round of budget dialogues, I did not hear anyone asking for new taxes of any sort. So, but thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister Wasnick. Are there any other questions or comments or? Okay, so you know how I feel on the subject, but I'm not going to say it now. I think it's a great idea. I'm very much about small business, and I'm very pro-development. I'm all those things. I'm entirely different, but we'll save that for another day. I believe we are now concluded with this stage of our review. Madam Clerk, are there any submissions from the public to appear before committee?
Well, there were no submissions from the public, Madam Chair.
If there are no submissions from the public, seeing there's no witness presentations, are there any general comments from committee? Seeing none, does the committee agree to proceed to a clause-by-clause review of Bill 16, an act to amend the Income Tax Act? Great. Okay. The committee agrees to conduct a clause-by-clause review of Bill 16. Turn to page 1 of the bill, clause 1. Does committee agree? Clause 2. On page 1, does committee agree? Okay. Clause 3. Does committee agree? Clause 4. Does committee agree? Clause 5 on page 2. Does committee agree? Ms. Cleveland?
Madam Chair, I move, seconded by the member for Yellowknife North, that subclause 5 brackets 3 of Bill 16 be amended by deleting comes into force and substituting is deemed to have come into force. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The motion is in order. To the motion? Question's been called. All in favor? Are you in favor? Okay. No one's opposed. The motion is carried. Does the minister concur with this amendment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
The minister concurs with the amendment. Thank you, Minister. Committee to Clause 5 as amended. Does committee agree? Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. This is just essentially a housekeeping motion to change when it comes into force, and I agree with that. But Madam Chair, if I may, I have a question for the minister. Specifically, and this is probably a question for the Deputy Minister or someone with a little more, can I just have some reasoning as to the three different coming into force dates here? We have 2018, 2015, and 2021. And I'm just wondering the extent to which perhaps we have to let some taxpayers know to go back and look at previous year's filings, or is this, yeah, thank you, Madam Chair.
Minister?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, Madam Chair. So firstly, no, certainly a CRA would handle these things. They'd administer the taxation for us, and they would manage the retroactive impacts. But with respect to the explanation as to why I am actually inclined to send that over to Kelly Bluck, I'm just trying to see if I could, yeah, if you don't mind, I'll have Kelly Bluck answer it, Madam Chair, and then I'm happy to take a follow-up if there is one. Why the different dates?
Different dates was because the legislation and the federal legislation changed at different times, became effective. So we are retroactively making it.
Could committee hear the response, Madam Chair?
It wasn't very clear.
Okay. Sorry, Madam Chair. So essentially it's because we are now trying to align ourselves with different parts of the federal tax regime, those different provisions within the federal system each changed at different dates. So now by bringing ours into force to those dates, we're bringing ours into force to match the dates in the federal one. We're just, as we've said, it's a bit of a housekeeping. We could have one by one made these changes. Instead, it's happening on bulk, which means that the housekeeping for each of these items has a different date vis-a-vis the feds. Thank you.
MLA Johnson, does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I guess since the feds made the change, it just took us a few years to get our legislation to catch up on those housekeeping ones. But I guess the small business tax rate reduction actually starts January 1st, 2021. So it actually wouldn't apply to anyone filing taxes right now, or the pandemic. It's only going to apply going forward. Can I perhaps just have the minister speak to, was it possible to actually make it apply to 2020, which I think is the year many small businesses saw a reduction in their tax rates? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Minister Wozniak?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I suppose that may be a question for our legislative drafter, and so in theory, yes. So it won't catch anyone filing for their 2020 taxes, but look, pandemic's not over, and folks still aren't necessarily back to normal. So hopefully, it will still have some positive impacts going forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? No. So does the committee agree that Bill 16, an act to amend the Income Tax Act, is now ready as amended and reprinted for consideration in Committee of the Whole? Ms. Cleveland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that Bill 16, an act to amend the Income Tax Act, be reported to the Assembly as ready for consideration in Committee of the Whole as amended and reprinted. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The motion is in order. Motion is on the floor. To the motion. Question. All in favor? None opposed. Motion is carried. Bill 16, an act to amend the income tax, will be reported to the Assembly as ready for consideration in Committee of the Whole as amended and reprinted. I want to thank you, Minister Wozniak. Thanks to your officials and everyone for attending. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn. Caitlin. Thank you, Caitlin. So that's done.
Thank you, Madam Chair.